The reason I got involved in the West Cheshire Poverty Truth Commission firstly was because I was asked by Cheshire West and Chester Council if I would chair this thing called the Poverty Truth Commission. I'd never heard of a Poverty Truth Commission before, but they explained that they wanted somebody to chair it who was apolitical, and as Lord Lieutenant I am apolitical.
So Cheshire West and Chester Council knew that poverty was becoming a huge issue across the borough, and we decided to lead on the West Cheshire Poverty Truth Commission because we thought it was the best way of really addressing those issues of poverty and inequality. We knew that other councils across the country had run inequality and poverty commissions, but the PTC model was the best way of really getting to the root causes of poverty and the issues that affected our residents.
I got involved in the Poverty Truth Commission because it was important for DWP to be part of the conversation and to listen about what was being said on poverty, to show people what we do, and also to dispel any myths and assumptions that people may have about DWP and the range of services that we provide. DWP are an essential part of the community, and from our perspective, we needed to make those links with the civic and business leaders and of course the community inspirers who spoke so personally and passionately about the experiences that they'd had in respect of poverty. And it was important for DWP to understand where we fitted in because we share in many ways the same priorities.
I think it's very different from what the local council or indeed government as a whole has done before, because what the Poverty Truth Commission does is to listen, and when I say listen I mean really listen, to people in need. It is really the reverse. It's not a load of middle class people thinking up ideas of how they could help those in need. It's actually listening to people who've had real experience of being in really, really difficult circumstances and listening to them about how the welfare state has helped or indeed failed to help them.
So the Poverty Truth Commission model differs from anything else the council has done before because it's about putting those that experience poverty right at the heart of our work. Too often council projects have involved looking at data, being officer-led and really from the top down, but this was a complete reversal. It's from the bottom up. It's looking at the issues that those that have experienced poverty face, making sure their voices are heard and acted upon.
Well, what difference has the pledge made? Well, the pledge is a real commitment between DWP and customers, and indeed customers and DWP, about how we treat each other. We're proud of the service that we provide in our job centres and across DWP, and the pledge is a visible commitment to that service, and it provides us with a constant reminder. The pledge is proudly displayed in each of our 5 job centres in Cheshire West and Chester, and it shows our commitment, along with other partners, to the service that we provide. We in fact encourage other partners to sign the pledge when they come and work from the job centre. And in fact the pledge, we had community inspirers visit the job centres to see for themselves and meet the staff firsthand to find out what went on, and that all helped shape the pledge, which is of course a two-way street.
Well, the way the Poverty Truth Commission has impacted on me personally was really quite a shock. I guess I come from a privileged background, and it was an enormous privilege firstly to listen to the 15 people we had, the 15 community inspirers. They were all just wonderful people for a whole panoply of different circumstances, had fallen on difficult times. And what was a shock was to hear that the safety net of the welfare state frankly has big holes in it, and also that it's really not connected. What I discovered in particular was that when somebody's desperate, where they go for help first is is almost random. They might go to a food bank, they might go to a charity, they might go to the church, they might go to a service provider of the local authority, they might go to the Department of Work and Pensions, they might go to the National Health Service. And what happens at the moment is that organisation where they go first gives them however help that agency gives. But it doesn't largely look at the human being as a whole. It doesn't realise that most of these people live unbelievably complex lives and have a series of problems.
So the West Cheshire Poverty Truth Commission, I think, is quite unique in its approach. It doesn't really duplicate any of the work that's been going on with other organisations and other bodies across the borough, because it has such a unique perspective in that we are looking at what people that have experienced poverty have to say. It's all about their experience, and it's about them expressing their voice, their truths, and us listening and acting upon it. And because it's such a collective way of doing things, we're not only working with those that have experienced poverty, but we're working across the borough with business and civic leaders, people from faith and voluntary sectors. We can all get round the table, we can all discuss openly and honestly about those issues, and then look at solutions which involve those that have experienced poverty.
The message I would have to DWP colleagues is to simply get involved. You know, you will have a different conversation with your community inspirers, and you will need to, and I think, get more than just your partnership managers involved in the Poverty Truth Commission conversation. And also be prepared to represent DWP, not just the Job Centre service.
So the West Cheshire Poverty Truth Commission is making a huge difference. The fact that we've engaged so many organisations from business, civic, voluntary sectors and other services such as the DWP is making a huge impact in the services that they deliver and the lives of our residents. We're making sure that everybody in Cheshire West understands the pledge that we've made, that we're really serving those people that experience poverty as best we can, and that we can try and avoid more residents ending up in poverty as well.
I think is being done by any government agency, including the local authority. I think it's really different because they, as I've said earlier, are listening to people in need, and those people are helping the council to change the way they do things. For example, they're about to launch a new local offer because the council discovered that people find the local offer as currently written very difficult to understand and to use. It's going to be written now in much more user-friendly language. And that's a good example of how the council is changing the services it's offering to people thanks to the work of the Poverty Truth Commission.
And the other thing that I'd like to say is that give it time. You need to work at this, and it won't just happen overnight. But the longer it takes, the more meaningful outcomes we'll get together as a partnership.
I think as politicians we like to be in control of the process, and for many ways this Poverty Truth Commission model made us step back and actually listen to the voice of our residents, and some of it was quite uncomfortable. But it's so important that we hear the voices of those that experience poverty, and I think that should be the benchmark for all policy making. We have to know what our residents really want, how our policies affect them and how we can improve them, and the Poverty Truth Commission model really allows us to do that. So I would recommend any council that really wants to address poverty to do so.